Okay. Good evening, Alicia. Thanks for joining.
Hi.
Hi, sweetheart. Welcome. Okay, so let me see if I can put that up there. Give me one moment, everybody. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload another little file. And it is a file that highlights all the sutras based on categories, basically. So whether it's part of mantra, whether it's part of kundalini, whether it's part of breath work. So let me attach that file for all of you before we begin. Yep. Okay, almost there. There we go. File. Okay, so when I'm uploading, you can download, and then when I send everybody the YouTube link for the session tonight, I will also include this as an attachment. And again, what it does is it highlights each sutra from the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra and kind of puts it into categories based on practices. Okay? Okay, so welcome to Sacred Verse. Let me just let a couple more people in here. We are on session 3 of Sacred Verse. And these are some very, just to say the least, they're very sacred. These teachings are an opportunity for us to begin exploring the mystical side of yoga teachings that are embedded into yoga scriptures. So one of the primary branches of yoga is contemplation of yoga texts. And in many of these yoga traditions, they highlight how when we study the texts, that it begins to not only invite transmissions, but also these little seeds are implanted into our subconscious, and they begin to sprout over many years, and in some yoga lineages, they say over many lifetimes. So when we study the yoga text, I like to highlight to everybody, don't feel as if you have to have like this full comprehension of everything that's being explored, or if there's confusion or a lack of clarity. I'm encouraging you not to get too impatient or frustrated. Really just allow your ears to soften and allow your mind to be open, and then from there these beautiful seeds are just planted, and they will sprout on their own. So this sacred verse, what I'd like to just highlight, just for those people that are going to be viewing this for the first time, because this is session 3, is that the sacred verses, they're an opportunity for us to get introduced to these sacred texts. And then next year, I'll be exploring each one of the texts in great detail. So these are very comprehensive texts, and they deserve space, and they deserve time and presence. And so just spending 90 minutes on one text really doesn't do the text justice. So tonight is just a little introduction to the Vijnana Bhairava. And next year, if you would like to dive deeper into this text, which I highly encourage you to, then we can look into registering you for the course. So let's start with a little bit of putting this text, the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, into context, a little bit about the historical context of it, and just some real practicalities. So this text is 112 sutras, and it comes from Kashmir Shaivanism, which is a Tantric lineage. And this text basically is an exploration of the nature of reality. And it spends, if I had to just highlight a few take homes before we dive into it a little more deeply, I mean, it brings us into utilizing an incredible amount of breath awareness, energy centers in your body, and using philosophical approaches from non-dual awareness, mantra, visualizations, and contemplations to really begin expanding your awareness and expanding your heart. So, as many yoga scriptures, there's many translations. So the translation that I would probably recommend the most, I don't have with me tonight, because I lent it to someone. And those people that you lent the text to and they don't give it back to you. I'm really hoping I get that back soon. But it is Swami Lakshmanju. Swami Lakshmanju. Let me wipe that one up here in the chat. And that was the one that Sally Kempton, one of my primary teachers, she recommends this one. Here we go. And listen, I highly encourage you as a person, as an individual, to explore different translations with all of these texts. And the one that seems to talk to you the most, I encourage you to go for it, because each of the translations, they are unique and different in their own way. Some are more academic and some people prefer that. Some are a little bit more mystical and some prefer that. Some are more simple and diluted and some people prefer that. So I encourage you to go with what resonates for you and really what allows you to access the practices. I mean, that's the main thing here. So, and then the other one I would recommend is Swami Satya Sangananda Saraswati. Okay, that is another translation. Now, the one that, and those are, I would say those two translations are quite, yeah, they're really rooted in like Hindu, in academic Hindu history, and I mean, all of them are based on Hindu history, but these two have a lot of research that was done, and a lot of the findings were of them rooting themselves in India and doing tons of research. Now, the one that I'm using tonight, and mostly because I have found the Radiant Sutras to allow everybody, all kinds of demographics of students, to access these teachings in a very accessible way. And Lauren Roche, he has put these teachings in the most, I don't know, just juicy and beautiful and rich and sensual way that just wants people to dive into this text even more. So I almost feel like if you're new to this text for the first time, you might want to start with Lauren's, and then from there maybe go a little bit more into the intellectual academic translations. Okay, now the author of the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra is Abhinavagupta, and the text came out like around 750 CE, so Common Era, which that's kind of, for those of you that are new to the Tantra lineages, a lot of the Tantra scriptures, yeah, they didn't really come out till like 7, 8, 9, 10 hundreds. So a little bit later compared to some of these classical yoga texts. And this is, and if you haven't had the chance to do a little bit of exploration on Abhinavagupta, I highly encourage you to read about him. I mean, he is this beautiful, he became this beautiful guru, but I don't think he really liked to label himself that way. I think he liked to label himself as a mystical poet, and he was a musician, and he was a dancer, and he was an artist, and he was a philosopher. He went to school to study art and philosophy, and he was a theologian as well. So he took all these beautiful experiences, and from there really dove into opening himself up to the cosmos and received these very powerful teachings. And yeah, I think he wrote over 35 texts. One of the most famous one of his texts was the Tantra Loka. And then he kind of rooted himself into Kaula and Trika schools of Tantra, and then from there kind of formed Kashmir Shaivanism. So Kashmir Shaivanism is one of the Tantric lineages, and yeah, I think this lineage has about five primary yoga texts, and this is one of them. This is one of the primary yoga texts in his school of Kashmir Shaivanism. So, and for those of you that are new to Tantra, Tantra is it's a pathway to invite the most, householder, domesticated human being into the universe inside of their bodies and minds. It's a lineage that opened up doorways for women and for farmers and for agriculturalists and domesticated beings, okay, versus these sages and scholars and philosophers and men, so it really opened up all these doorways for people that didn't have access to these teachings and to the yoga teachings. And so Tantra has also been known to be an expedited pathway to enlightenment. And this text in particular, I truly feel that maybe that's why they say that about Tantra, because these practices in this text, I have to say, they they quickly jumped me into new territories of perception very quickly. So I'm very passionate about this text. I have to say, it's probably out of all my texts, I'm the most passionate about this one in this current time of my spiritual journey. And Tantra is a weaving. It's a weaving of all of your parts, and a weaving of resources to bring you into all and who you are. And this text is a beautiful example of that. It really weaves in all kinds of practices. So what I attached in tonight's file, and I just want to read over, they basically compressed the sutras into practice, into certain practices. So there's Kundalini practices, there's breath practices, there's Madhya practices, there's practices for the senses, there's sound and mantra, practices on emptiness, on the cosmos, on the body, on the heart center, on pleasure, on light and dark, on sleep and dreams, on the body, on gazing, equanimity, sensations and emotions, on mind fluctuations, on the Supreme Lord, and on the playfulness and magic of the universe. So I just wanted to highlight the various practices. So we obviously won't be able to get into all those this evening, but I'll bring you into just a couple. And I wanted to highlight, when I first learned about this text, my teachers, they reminded me numerous times that, and I just want to highlight that here and now, that you could literally take just one of these threads, one of these sutras, one of these verses, and just stick with just that one practice for the rest of your life, and even for lifetimes. And that one practice, that one sutra, that one verse in and of itself can expand your awareness and bring you into many, many different doorways and dimensions. So as I introduce the several of the practices this evening, and if you dive into this text even more, I highly encourage you just to pick one or two sutras, one or two practices, and commit to them, versus trying to, maybe you do explore many up front, and then you find one that really sits with you energetically, and one that seems very tangible and visceral, and then stay with that, because these practices from the Vijnana Bhairava, they are meant to be savored over an extended period of time. They're not meant to have like a binge session over a couple nights and all of a sudden to see some results. It's a very subtle, experiential process over an extended period of time. And also, when I received these teachings, it was also highlighted that to chew these threads and these sutras in many different ways, like to talk about them, to write about them, to practice them outside, to practice them inside, to practice them in your car, and to dream about them, to think about them, meaning that bring them into the different parts of your life and your styles of living, and then they really begin to awaken even more. Okay, so the text is laid out for us in for me, in the most, very like romantic, passionate way. And so the foundation of the text starts with a little mythic story, and it starts with Bhairava. And Bhairava is one of the names for Shiva. So Shiva has over 1,000 names in these various mythic scriptures and stories. And Bhairava, like when you break up the word Bhairava, B-A, means fear. B-H-A means great light. So Bhairava has been known to be one of the forms of Shiva that can be a little scary, that can shake you up, that can almost be like a bolt of lightning that awakens you. But the highlight of Ba means, which I want to highlight this evening, is light. It's like the light of you. And then Reva means like sound, like to resonate. So Bhairava is this form of Shiva that resonates. There's a sound that reverberates through you, and it's the reverberation embedded inside of light. Some of the teachings around Shiva, is that Shiva is the creation, the dissolution. He's the concealment. He's the revelation. He's everything, and that Shiva literally lurks everywhere. And so he's everything. And so the Vijnana Bhairava teaches us that we are Bhairava, that we are everything. But this mythic story starts with Bhairava and Bhairavi. So Bhairava is the god, Shiva, and Bhairavi is Shakti, the goddess. And so this text starts right away from a conversation that the two of them are having. And you can even just close your eyes just for a moment. We're not going to dive into a meditation, but just close your eyes. And I just invite you to imagine this beautiful like forest deep in the Himalayas. And it's this place between heaven and earth. It's this celestial realm. And the trees are glistening with diamonds and rubies and emeralds, and the grasses are this bright emerald green, and the skies are these like bright magical blues. And underneath the tree you have Bhairavi, which is Shakti, the goddess, reclining on top of Shiva, Bhairava. And Shiva, he is quite sculpted because he's a yogi, and he has his beautiful long dreadlocks. And he has his these beautiful brown eyes. And Shakti, as she lies on top of him, she's got her long dark hair, and she's got a like a red dress on with actually no top on, and she's got her beautiful skin that's glistening, and she's kind of stroking his chest with a flower from the valley. And as she's stroking her chest, lying on him, they have this conversation. And this conversation starts with her asking him, she asks him, who am I? What path do I take to explore these questions about why I'm here and who am I? What pathways do I take? I have doubts, she says, and I have questions. And right away, that's how it opens. And to put these mythic figures, and to land them into you and who you are, these teachings of Shiva and Shakti reveal to us that Shiva, and I know some of you that are here with me tonight know this already, so it's a beautiful review, that Shiva is like the premortal awareness. It's this pervasive presence, right? And Shakti, as he introduces right away, is bliss, is energy, is power, is form. So he is expanded everything, and she is the power of the universe. And right away, we learn, even in this text, but many of the other beautiful tantric texts in this lineage, that they coexist together. One can't live without the other. It's kind of like you have fire and heat. It's like the heat wouldn't exist without the fire, without the flame. And the flame wouldn't exist without the heat. So they coexist and they need each other. Or like water and wetness. It's like wetness can't take form without the actual water, and water is wet. So it's like this this coexisting, and it's like this with Shiva and Shakti. It's like the awareness is powered by Shakti, by energy, and it's the energy that cultivates form and actually cultivates the capacity for us to be aware that we have awareness. So these are kind of the foundations of Shiva and Shakti in our minds and in our bodies, and how we can begin taking this conversation between Shiva and Shakti and begin kind of putting it into our practices. So, if you have the Radiant Sutras there with you, amazing. I think actually before we start diving into the sutras together, and before we start diving into any of the practices, I would like to just ask if any of you have any questions at this point. And we can just, it's a small group of us tonight, and if you would like to just put anything out there at this point, you can feel free. Otherwise, we'll begin to dive into the practices.
No, but I can hear you perfectly well, and such a great storyteller, Suzanne. It's beautiful.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you with me tonight, Anne. Welcome, welcome, beautiful. Okay, there's just so many amazing sutras in this. So, but my aim tonight is to have you go home tonight with some practices that you literally can just do every day. If you're walking down the street, if you're in your car, or you're in the shower, or wherever you need to be, or sitting on your cushion every morning with your altar. These are practices that you can do anywhere at any time of the day. And I think I want to have us start with let me first what he begins to explain to Bharavi Shakti is some of the foundations of the pathway to explore who and what we are. And he introduces Madhya. So, I just want to highlight a few moments here. Madhya means the center. It also means, Madhya means spaciousness. And so one of the primary take-home messages from the Vijnana Bhairava is that we want to look for the spaces. We want to look for the madhyas. Madhya also can mean like pause, or the space in between. It can also mean like a crack. It's like that little the place in between two moments of time, the space in between activities, the space in between night and day, the space in between Monday and Tuesday, the space in between tasks, the space in between roles or jobs or relationships. And what the Vijnana Bhairava highlights is that the spaces in between is where you will find Shiva. Because she's like, she wants to be immersed into him. She knows he's this expanded premortal awareness. And she says, I want to be with you. How do I immerse myself into you? And he says, you can find me in the places in between. And there you will expand into me. And so, and then many, if not most of these sutras in this text are examples of that, are about the cracks or the places where you find space, pause, still, quiet moments. And those are available every day throughout our entire day. And those are the moments where we have access to mystical wisdom that immediately triggers Shakti, or even Kundalini Shakti, Prana Shakti, Chit Shakti, that begins to purify all of the obstacles that are in our way, begins to awaken us, and also begins to reveal the skills and the capacities that we have, like our gifts. Okay, so that's one of the things he begins to teach right away. I would say from like the first sutra all the way up to like 17 and 18, he's describing to her about spaciousness, about the pauses. Okay? Now, the other, give me one more moment here. Yeah, I just wanted to find that one sutra. Because what he says to her, he says to her, if you want to find me, you move into the bliss. But bliss here is defined as vibrating, pulsating frequency. And sound plays a significant role, like the vibration of sound is one of the, in this text, and I think it has a lot to do with Abhinavagupta because he was a musician. Music was, and in this lineage, mantra is one of the primary forms of awakening and purification. And so right away in Sutra 17 and 18, he's talking about go into the vibrations, go into frequency. And when you go into bliss and frequency, you will find me. You will find the spaciousness there. So in Sutra 17, he says, he's talking about vowels, and then savor a sound with infinite gentleness. Attend to where it comes from within you and where it goes to when it fades away. Listen to the subtle, ever-changing tones. The power of sound will lead you into the power of silence. Super beautiful. Syllables are born from space. Resonate in that space and melt into that spaciousness. Know this silent spaciousness as yourself. So from that, let's put that down for a moment and just please come find a tall seat. Okay, so the first two sessions, we spent a lot of time talking about the seat. So I'm just going to remind everybody to place your pelvis up onto a position so that you're not too far forward to the pubic bone, but you're not too far back where the low back starts to round. Okay. So we want basically the pubic bone and the tailbone moving towards each other. And I highly invite you to create a seat so that your knees and your ankles are very comfortable. And to place your head over the heart and the heart over your pelvis. Okay. And wherever you are, close the eyes. We'll place the hands down onto the legs. And just a few deep cycles of breath into the nose and down into the heart. And then from the heart back up through your nose. Okay, just a couple deep breaths on your own. And then wherever you are, we're going to fold the hands to the heart center, Anjali Mudra. Invite the throat to stay open. And after a couple cleansing breaths, allow your breath to become soft and organic. Real gentle breath. And I'll invite us to chant Om 3 times. And I invite there to be that recognition, that full attentive presence in between the Oms, and that we just rest in that pause before we begin the next Om. And when you rest in that pause, attune to the sensation of it in the body. So from here, exhale the air completely. And breathe the breath into the body. Empty the lungs completely. And inhale for 3 Oms. Notice the resonance. Notice the space at the end of what's resonating. Beautiful. You can gently release the hands and just allow the eyes to open naturally. So no forcing. When you're ready, just allow them to gradually open. At the end of frequency, there's that real tangible, visceral feeling of openness, of spaciousness. You know, that's why they say that Shiva is, you know, he's the howler. You know, the Om is Shiva's howl from the universe. And so it comes from Shiva and ends at Shiva, that cosmos, that mystical, premortal ground of being that is exactly who we are. But that doesn't exist without frequency, the Shakti, the vibration. So this text really explores how we are the pulsation, we are the beat, we are the rhythms of nature and life, but we are also that that ground of awareness that lurks everywhere. Okay, I'd like to jump up to Um, okay, I'd like to jump to 24. He, from about from about 20 to 24, he's really bringing you, he's bringing you down into the body. So now we really are grounding into the body, the physical body. So in 24, he's saying, contemplate the constitutes of the body, the muscles and the blood and the marrow of the bones. And inside the muscles, inside the bones, you will find emptiness. You will find this expanded spaciousness. Tender one, practice this and be born into the steady light of being. So from sound and from frequency and from vibration, he's starting to draw us into our bodies. And so the and then all the way up into 27 as well. And he begins to draw us into these madhyas, which are like energy centers of spaciousness in the body. Now, I would like to highlight these here, and then we will practice with them. So these are some of my daily practices, and they have really made such a big difference in obstacles that have been in my body, and at the same time inviting my awareness to go into dimensions that it hasn't really been to before. So we have these little energy centers. We have one in the center of our heart. And so many of you here have practiced with me, so you know that we have one like right behind the breastbone, and in front of the spine. Okay, this is a big, and it's where I take people right away when we start our meditations. But the reason why is because it's a madhya. It's a space of stillness, of mystical wisdom, of depth, and it's like a doorway. These madhyas, they're doorways, but you have to rest in the madhya first, and then the doorways appear. Okay, we have another madhya, at the third eye, but it's more in the center of the brain. So back at like the center of the brain. We have another madhya at the crown of the head. We have another madhya in the center of the pelvis. So these are the madhyas that are in the body that I'd like to spend some time with today. There's also madhyas outside the body that this text also takes us through. But for tonight, I'm just going to have us work with the madhyas for right now inside the body. Okay. If you look at 27, he says, put attention into the luminous connections between the centers of the body, where the mind loves to dissolve. The base of the spine and the top of the skull, the genitals and the heart and the throat and the forehead to the crown of the head. Enter that glowing net of light with a focus born of awe, and even your bones will know enlightenment. Amazing. So here we go. When you're ready, please find a tall seat, okay? No rush. And take your time to close your eyes. I'm going to invite the heels of the hands to come a little bit closer towards the pelvis tonight. And allow the elbows to be free. And if you're sitting in a chair, make sure that the sit bones are a little bit more towards the edge of the chair, or the pelvis is, just so that all four corners of your feet can be rooted onto the ground. And just allow your awareness to rest first in the nose, and just become aware of your natural breath moving in and out of the nostrils this evening. And allow the ears to stretch out of the spine so that you're sitting very tall. And allow the skin around your lips and your jawline to relax. So there can be like this nectar of sweetness that almost drips from the back of the throat when your jaw relaxes, allowing the throat to be coated with this invisible honey. When we teach our face and our jaw to relax, and then take a moment to just let the tip of the tongue touch the upper palate of the mouth. And instead of touching the tip of the tongue to the back of the upper teeth, take the tip of the tongue just a tiny bit farther back. Okay. And then keeping the tongue in the upper palate for just a few moments, allow your awareness to rest between the eyebrows and a bit above. And you touch the skin of the forehead with your attention. And then from the skin of the forehead of your third eye, begin to move more to the center of your skull. Notice what you feel. Notice any sensation that might be penetrating through the skull, through the skin on the face. And then from here, just allow the tongue to relax once again, and glide your awareness down to the bone of the sternum bone, the chest bone, and tickle this bone with the light of your awareness. So there's full recognition of the weightiness of this bone. And then allow the awareness to attune to the vibration of the bone, to the frequency of the bone. And then begin moving to the back of that bone, more into the center of your chest. And notice the space there, keeping the breath really soft. And then from here, from that spaciousness in your heart, begin to glide your awareness to the crown of the head and begin to pinpoint your attention in a very one pointed fashion right into the crown. I'm going to invite us to visualize your breath descending down through the crown. So when you inhale, there's a descent, there's a jiva, there's a soul that drops down into your body on the inhale. And many of you have practiced this breath awareness with me before. And when you inhale, stretch the inhale to be a bit fuller so that the breath descends through the crown, through the center of the brain, through the center of the throat, through the center of the heart. And see if you can take a deep inhale so you can draw the breath down into the center of your pelvis. And then the exhale, it ascends, it rises up through the center of the heart, center of throat, center of brain, and back out into the cosmos through the top of the skull. And keep moving with this breath awareness, inhaling to descend down into you, into your soul, into your pranic body. And as you exhale, follow the breath rising right up in front of the spine. Keep going here with this breathing practice. Become aware of that thread-like river in the center of you that you're breathing into, this central river, the Sushumna. That thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of different energy channels are crossing into this major river, the Sushumna. It's a very subtle channel in front of your physical spine. When you breathe in, breathe down into this channel. And when you breathe out, let your body relax and breathe up and out through the crown. Now we will add one more layer to this practice, and we will add kumbhaka's retentions, these pauses at the top of the inhale, bottom of exhale. The pauses are these madhyas, these still, quiet, expanded moments. So when you're ready, exhale your air and breathe down into your skull for 5, 4, all the way down into your pelvis. 3, 2, 1. Pause. Good. Breathe out and up for 5, 4. Out through throat and skull. 2, 1. Pause with the exhale out of the body. Good. Inhale, breathe in and down for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. Relaxing the body. Good. Exhale out and up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. Soften. Breathe in for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Pause. Listen. Breathe out for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. Quiet. Depth. Good. And breathe in, taking a couple cleansing, washing breaths on your own. And then allow the breath to slow down and become more innate. Allow the breath to be subtle and organic, soft and real sweet. And take your time. Again, when the eyes are ready, allow them to float open. So the sushumna, which many of you have experienced in your practices, have studied, the sushumna is begin to think of it as like the home of your awareness. It's where your awareness goes to when it's not in its full expanded state. So when we breathe into the sushumna and allow our awareness to focus in on the sushumna, a lot begins to happen. It's almost like like you turn on like the light switch, or you're turning on, like a power switch, and Shakti begins to release her her various forms. So we have, let's just say we have there's many forms of Shakti, but let me just talk about 3 primary forms of Shakti for a moment. We have Shamasti Shakti. And this is the Shakti that's very pervasive. It's like the Shakti at the cosmos level. So when we breathe down into the Sushumna, it's like calling on that form of Shakti. So she holds like the matrices of the stars. She holds the DNA codes of the planets, and she even holds your matrices from the planets. It's like when all of us are born, we're born into a matrix that we carry, our blueprint. But the blueprint is connected to the cosmos. So that form of Shakti, when you breathe down into your Sushumna and you're really focused on your central channel, like it's this very thin, subtle, but also very resilient and tangible place in front of your physical spine. And it brings that form of Shakti down into your body and begins to, well, the first thing that begins to do is to purify you. It also begins to download some of the soul's karmic imprints so that you can begin your soul's journey. Okay, the next layer, that breathing down into your Sushumna, the next layer of Shakti is Chit Kundalini. And Chit Kundalini is like our capacity to be self-recognizing, our capacity, our power to have self-awareness, to observe your mind, to observe your emotions, to observe your sensations. This is well, it's a key to spiritual awakening. If you don't have the capacity to be self-aware, we're not going to be able to awaken. So it's when you breathe down into your Sushumna, it basically turns on Chit Kundalini, your capacity to become self-aware. So first it turns on the cosmos Kundalini Shakti, then it turns on the Chit Kundalini of self-recognition. And then the third layer of Kundalini that's turned on when you breathe into your Sushumna is Prana Kundalini. And Prana Kundalini, this is the expanding pranic life force in your physical body and in your subtle body, your energetic body. So this one, basically it feeds all your organs, it feeds your nervous system, it feeds your brain, and it feeds your vitality. It also will begin the purification. So this one's the big purification one, breathing down into the Sushumna. So some of our primary obstacles, the stagnation, the congestion, the swelling, the pressure, the inflammation of our subtle bodies will be at those center points I mentioned. So we tend to get congestion at this center point, or we get obstacles at the top of the throat, which is our other center point, and here in the heart and in the center of the pelvis. So when we inhale into the central channel and exhale up and out, we begin to awaken all these different layers of Shakti, and she just begins to do her work. It's like, it's not like we have to really even cognitively think about these things, but this is what is theoretically happening. Now, so that's one primary practice. I mixed a couple of big practices in there. The other really powerful practice, which I know many of you have probably been doing on and off in your yoga journeys, but if you actually maintain this as one of your primary practices, you will begin seeing some big shifts energetically. But this just really just resting in the pauses at the top of your inhale and really immersing into the bottom of the exhales. Okay, so we have you have your 3-part breaths. Okay, you have your purvakas, which is the filling up. You have the rajakas, which is the emptying out, and then you have your kumbhakas, which is the retention. And if you really begin to pay attention to the journey of the inhale, really being with the beginning of it, the middle of it, the end of it, the fullness of it, and then just pausing there. Because when the breath is filling up, that we have Shakti there. Shakti's in the breath and her different layers. And then in the kumbhakas, the retention, they say that, your breath stops, but your mind stops. Like the fluctuations of the mind stop. And so then this is where we have the pausing, is where we really have the awareness and the heart expand. And then the emptying out is the return to the cosmos. So they say every time you inhale, the soul is descending into your bodies, your physical and your subtle bodies. And then every time you pause on the bottom of the exhale, you're pausing outside of your physical bodies, and you pause in the pervasive part of yourself. Okay. Okay, I'd like to move through a couple more practices now, and then we'll move into the sutras. Does anyone have any questions at this point? No, you're good.
I have a question. Yeah. When you're working with the kumbhakas between the breaths, and you're struggling with either one or the other, what are the indications of that? I remember hearing them at some point, but I don't remember. Well,
yeah, I mean, I will say yeah, I mean, I probably should have spent a little more time preparing from a pranayama standpoint on it. It's not technically a pranayama practice, it's more of a breath awareness. But ideally, there's not any major struggling. If there's big struggling, then you immediately release. So, we're breathing in, and we're inhaling, and we're savoring the top of the inhale, and we're just pausing. These pauses tonight, I might have potentially could have been too long of a hold for you. So we're going to try another one in a moment. And it's just that more of a pause versus a hold, this next one. But the key is you don't want too much struggling.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't necessarily related to the practice that we did, but just in general, because sometimes I find for myself that the holding the exhale is more uncomfortable than pausing at the inhale. And when you said that it's actually the descent of your soul back into the physical body and pausing into that space of the soul, and it just spoke to me because I just muted myself, because yeah, it just was like, oh, am I uncomfortable with my soul?
Well, no, the exhale is actually your soul absorbing into the cosmos. So the exhale
Okay.
is actually the death of, in a way, it's supposed to represent, like the inhale's the soul, the descent of the soul. It's the livelihood of your soul.
Okay. Good.
So why the exhale? I mean, the exhales tend to holding kumbhaka on exhale is known to be more advanced, and why often it can become uncomfortable has a lot to do with our attachment to our lives. The attachment to embodiment, and even our soul being embodied, because the soul jiva is an embodiment. So no, the exhale is representing absorption into.
You want me to put headphones on?
This.
You want me to put headphones on?
The what on?
You want me to put headphones on?
The exhale represents the absorption into the universe, but it also represents death. So that's why the exhale can be very uncomfortable for people, because it represents death.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. A great question, Alicia. Okay, so again, do what you need to do to get comfortable. We're going to move into a couple more practices here to seal our evening. So find a tall seat. Yeah, allow the heels of the hands to be onto the thighs. Good, and then just allow the low ribs to gently release towards the hip bones so that the kidneys are full. And allow your throat to stay open. And begin to glide your awareness to the sit bones. And invite the sit bones to melt into the seat. So much that the weightiness of your pelvis begins to melt into the ground beneath you. Allow the ankles and the knees to open, those joints, allow them to relax and open. And then from here, allow the side bodies, and we just bring your awareness really to the very depth and the pit of the armpit, and just allow that to very gently lift up. And then just begin to gently move your shoulders back. And then we don't have to draw the shoulders down by any means, but you do relax them upon the lift of the armpit. And you let the shoulders drape on the little dome of the armpit. And I know for many people, bringing awareness to this part of the body is new. But I'm just going to let your awareness move into that space. There's a space underneath the shoulder bones and the arm bones, the upper arm bone and shoulder joint, that space. And can you just let your awareness rest there for a few moments? And keeping the spaciousness underneath the upper arm bones, take your attention to the very tip of your tailbone. So you can start with the sit bones and then allow your attention to meet the very tip of the tailbone. And begin to glide your awareness almost like an ice skater glides on ice. And you just glide your way up the spine, around the curve of the sacrum, and then changing the curve to move into the low back, the lumbar, and skate your way around the mid back, the thoracic, and changing curves again into the cervical spine, the neck, all the way up to the base of the skull. Meet that place of the spine and the skull connecting. And then from here, move your awareness to the nostrils and begin to feel, like many of you do when you sit with me, just feel the breath in a very present, soft, gentle, and attentive way. Meet the breath in the nostrils. Notice the space of the nostrils, these little caves, these little canals. And feel the temperature of your breath. Feel the particles in the air meeting the nostrils. And become incredibly intimate with the river of the inhale, these two streams streaming from your nostril down into the lungs, down into the back of your heart. And then become immersed into the river of the exhale and send your exhale up to the third eye, between your eyebrows and a bit above. And we're going to move with this breath awareness practice, riding the wave of the inhale from nose to back of heart. And then from back of heart up to your third eye. And stay with this breathing practice. But I invite you to add the pauses at the top of the inhale, that moment of time pausing. And pause at the end of your exhale at the third eye. Immerse into that spaciousness. And keep going. The exhale is dissolving these knots of the mind structure that don't serve us, right up in the frontal lobes. So keep staying with this breathing practice for about 3 more cycles of breath. And then just rest in your presence. And begin to glide your awareness back to the crown of the head once again. And stay very focused on the crown of the head. And then begin to glide your awareness down to the third eye once again. And I invite you to bring to the forefront of your mind to visualize a recent emotional charge that you have experienced. Some kind of pain or suffering. It could be a conversation that you had, or an experience you went through, or an outcome that left a sensation for you that felt very uncomfortable. And be very specific and allow it to come to the forefront of your mind. And then, as you visualize in the forefront of the mind, turn your attention upon the sensation of it in the body. Good. And now draw your attention back to the third eye. And now bring to the forefront of your mind something of pleasure, an emotional charge of pleasure, whether it's joy, whether it's laughter, or playfulness, or celebration, or contentment. And allow the visual of the experience to be in the forefront of the mind. It could be a visualization of a loved one, or an event, or an experience. And visualize the moment. And then begin to feel that in your body. Turn to the sensation of the sweet experience. Feel it in your body. Good. And then turn your attention upon itself so that you're aware of your attention. And take the attention once again to the center of the chest. Start with the bone and then move to that place behind the bone. Notice the dynamism, the pulsation. And as you stay with the pulsation there, notice if you find expansion or stillness or spaciousness. Good. And then deepen the breath into the center of your chest. Big breath in. And relaxing the back body as you breathe out. Good. And then 2 more cleansing breaths on your own. Inhaling down into the pelvis. Relaxing the whole shoulder girdle as you breathe out. And please take your time once again. When you're ready, allow the eyes to ever so tenderly open. Okay, so we spent some time working with some more of the energy centers in the back of the heart, here at the third eye. We spent time with the sutras, moving through the curves of the spine. So he's got about 2 or 3 sutras that are specifically just becoming aware of the curves of the spine. And then we spent time visualizing some emotional charges. So he has some sutras that explore emotional charge. And inside the emotional charge is this power of Shakti that is purifying, and at the same time, the layers of Shakti that are Kundalini awakening, so it begins to expand awareness. So if we look, I'm jumping up ahead just so you have some numbers for yourself. If you look at 69 and 70, 69 and 70, okay, so 69 is really about this spaciousness of the body being sky. And then, I'm sorry, of putting space in the body. And then we get into 70, and 70 starts drawing us into emotion. So yes, as a piercing word, this is Sutra 70, a stab of betrayal, a boundary crossed, trust broken, and he's getting into pain. and really inviting you to feel pain and the sensation of it, the wounds. And pain is at the depth of pain is the spaciousness that leads into portals. So we have the awareness gets this capacity to get a little bit more expanded. Each time we sit with an emotion for an extended period of time, the awareness expands just a little bit more. And then just a little bit more, or it leans into a crack it hasn't leaned into, or it pervades into a shadow that hasn't really been lit up yet in the subtle body. You know, the sushumna is covered with samskaras and shadows. And so, you know, when we sit with emotion, sometimes I'm at this point now where I can literally feel the Shakti moving through the layers of scar tissue that are, I call it scar tissue, but it's literally not, it's in your subtle body, scars from the samskaras. And when I sit with my emotions, they're so powerful in regards to the Shakti inside of them. But we need the focused attention, and we need the spaciousness to just sit with them. So a lot of power is in the emotions. And the Pratyabhijna Hyaderam talks about this, the Spandakarikas talk about this. So many of these other tantric texts talk a lot about our emotions and how much Kundalini Shakti is inside of them. And then he begins to move into pleasure from there. And how pleasure is just, you have pain and you have pleasure, both charged with Shakti, you know, and ideally we want to be in the middle. We don't want to be too far into the pain all the time, and we don't want to be too far into the pleasure. We really just want to spend most of our time in the middle, but we do want to experience the charge in both of them. Okay. So those emotion ones would be more up by like 100 and 102 and 103. Yeah, 103 is the pleasure. Yeah, and we had some of the pain more down by 69. Okay. If you wanted to get right into just more talking about the Kundalini, we would look at, let me see, I think it'd be like 30 and 31. Let me just flip to that before we seal up our evening. I had to, yeah, 30, I think. No. So I sent, and I'm going to send it to you. If you want to be kind of focusing in on the emotions, or focusing on the breath awareness, or focusing on these madhyas, these center points of the body, begin to look at the sutras that I sent earlier in regards to which ones are for each practices. So tonight, just to review some of the subtle practices that if you begin to if you have your own meditation practices and just started to just put these in and just to see what happens, the descending inhale and ascending exhale, the breathing in and out of the sushumna, the pausing at the top of the inhales and pausing at the bottom of your exhales. The breathing, from this center point of the nose, because when we breathe in from the nose, it's brings us into the center point at the top of the throat. So the top of the throat, it's an energy center here where, awareness expands. So it brings us in here, and then we come all the way from the upper palate down into the energy center of the heart. And then I was having us exhale up to the third eye. So that one is, and even if you're just doing 3 to 8 rounds of this, and then just sitting very silently, sitting with your awareness and just observing what happens just from like 3 to 5 rounds of these very subtle breathing awareness practices. And then, just the simple act of bringing your attention to the crown of the head throughout your day, even just that it's known to be an instigator of the sky inside of us. So when you bring your awareness to the crown of the head, that in and of itself, according to the Vijnana Bhairava, is a practice that you could just focus on and savor it over an extended period of time, and that in and of itself would create some expanded states of awareness. And then I think those are some of the primary practices. A lot more to do here with this text, but I just wanted to share some of just some foundational, really simple practices that you can, like I said, you could truly just practice anywhere and anytime during the day. Do I have any questions? Again, I know I mentioned, does anyone else have any questions or comments? How did these feel when you were practicing these? I'd love to hear from you.
Battery, hi.
Hi, Anne.
Connected to Vivian's iPhone.
Oh, Anne, I can't hear you. Oh.
Sorry, I thought Vivian was talking and it was a bit choppy over the line, so I wasn't sure.
No,
Hi. I tried to practice Madhya recently, and the way that you introduced it with the breath practice and the visualization in the Sushumna, it was very, for me, it just really kind of it felt very quiet in a good way. It felt very expansive. I was very surprised. It was different from anything else I've ever done, actually. It was really wonderful.
Wow, thank you. That's beautiful to hear, Anne. And you're a big meditator, so that's really sweet to hear. I'm glad that was opening for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think I have to say that's one of the, after I set up my seat, that's what I start with, the very first thing. Inhaling down into the sushumna, down into the pelvis, and exhaling up and out. That's how I begin my practices. And it creates this steady, quiet, but open depth to begin the practices. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, it was also the fact that you asked us to visualize that just in front of the spine, that sort of brought it to a next level.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, well, that's in the Radiant Sutras. Like he really invites you to feel the bones of your spine to notice your spine at all times. If you just pay attention to your spine, that's all you need to do. That's considered one of the primary practices from the Vijnana Bhairava. You just notice the vertebrae, notice the curves, pay attention to your spine. That in and of itself is gonna, well, what it does is it opens up the sushumna, and so it's a very powerful practice.
I'll add that, I really find it like it's always these practices are very expedited. Like I'm amazed that, how expansive and deep they are very quickly. Like, I feel like it's like a fast track, like I feel like it takes me into that space that perhaps some other meditative practices I need much of a longer like run-in, whereas I feel like, I don't know, something about these just drops me in very quickly.
Totally. I mean, it's Shiva,
Yeah, it feels like very effective, actually, like it feels like just really effective practices for taking you there with a real immediacy.
I know, and they're so visceral, like the energy from them. Yeah.
So thank
you for sharing. And I know you've spent a lot of time with the Vijnana Bhairava practices, haven't you?
Yeah. But I feel like it's like there's something, because they're so deep, I always feel like they bypass logic and rationality. So I really appreciate the way that you've spoken about them today, because I think like there's a part of me that always just dives in, and so there's this that it feels very integrated today to have had that, to be able to talk about it as well as experience it in a very embodied way. So it was beautiful.
Hey, Alicia, it looks like you are like practicing what it means to be tantric, doing these meditation practices with your kids eating dinner.
Seriously. And earlier, Max was like unloading the groceries, and I was just like, okay, this is life around me.
That's right. Full domestication. And you really can do these practices during the midst of chaos.
Yeah, it's actually really surprising. Like Lucy was saying, I think she's hiding in a closet somewhere, but I couldn't today. So yeah, but it still works even with all of the house and the energy around you. Like somehow you create this space that, yeah. And everyone got to listen to your beautiful meditation too.
Amazing. That's so cool. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm in my third room, guys. Sorry. I'm in my third room. I had to breastfeed twice, but I went really deep nonetheless. So it is a real testament to the practices.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I started practicing, if you remember, but Bhairava, he's this form of Shiva that's intense. He's intense. And after I moved in some other meditation practices after the Vijnana Bhairava, I was like, gosh, like, I don't know if they're really working, because the practices from the Vijnana Bhairava, they're so powerful. There's this visceral pranic shakti that you can like grab onto and taste and but I remember talking to Sally about that, like, if I don't have that real visceral powerful sensation, are my practices is powerful? And she's like, yeah, she said, be careful not to get attached to those sensations in your meditation practices, and that that you feel like you have to have that kind of sensation for it to be effective. So I want to put that out there to you, because they are very viscerally powerful once as you start really using them. And yeah, just not to get, become attached to that sensation, because we can become very sensational. Humans are sensational. So yeah. Oh, thank you, my beauties. Thank you for being here for this text. So special. And
Thank you so much.
Oh, and you can share these with your kids. You can share these with your parents. You can share these with your partners. They're very, very accessible practices. We do the Pratyabhijna next month, another powerful tantric text. It's a little more theoretical, but super powerful way of seeing and experiencing reality, where the Vijnana Bhairava is like a full-on toolkit. So next month will just be a different experience. Please reach out if you have any questions. From my heart to yours, I feel so blessed to share these with you, beautiful, mystical beings, each and every one of you. Yeah. Okay. Ciao, beauties. Take care.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.